currency depreciation and election-related spending.
All right, still on the chart. So I can see that there was also a sharp decline from September 2024 to November 2024. Now, in September 2024, we were at 79.2%. And then in November 2024, we were at 72.2%. What do you think caused this drop in that period? Was the same? Is it the same factors?
Some of them, for instance, the tax to GDP ratio we saw was increasing. And so that decline. In addition to that, we know that bondholders, there's some of the debts that had been restructured. Government was now paying for them. And once you are paying on your debt, you are paying down on your debt, the value of the debt is supposed to come down. The debt services are key. And then, of course, our GDP performance. That is always constant. The government, Ghana's GDP performance was great in the year 2024, and bringing us back to pre-COVID level.
Okay. I think I get that. Hello, Emmanuel, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, all right. So now let's talk a bit about the implications, the economic implications of our trends, our GDP, debt to GDP trends. What are the risks of Ghana's rising debt to GDP ratio? What are the risks that it poses to us?
Well, a rising debt to GDP ratio leads to debt unsustainability and debt overhang. In other words, it will get to a point you become distressed. You are not able to pay your debt again. As what the car as you say, in class will be to meet here. If you say you don't have enough money to be able to pay down on your debt. My brother, that was one of the main reasons, if not the main, that we went to the IMF for an external facility. And so and one of the goals, one of the objectives of that IMF program was to reduce our debt to GDP ratio. In fact, at the time it was more than 100%.
Right.
It was more than 100%. And so we've seen some efforts that have been made to bring that down. At that time it was surprising because Bank of Ghana has its own debt to GDP ratio. Ministry of Finance had one. IMF also had it. It looked like a multiple choice question that you are supposed to choose the one you want. But when IMF came to town, it became clearer what it was and what the target of the program was to bring it down. Right. And at this point, I think it's okay to say that we've made some gains. We've been able to achieve that target. So we've seen it down. And so once that situation resurfaces and we continue to experience debt going up, debt to the GDP ratio going up, we'll get to a point of debt distress, debt overhang, that we will not be able to do anything. And for which reason we would say that the country is sick, the country is paralyzed.
Right.
That is where you hear things like, we cannot employ more, we have to do that. All of those things, you see, all the things you were hearing in an attempt to bring spending down and grow revenue was to aid national output or national income or improve that so that the debt to GDP ratio will come down in addition to servicing the debt. And so that is key. It has an impact on investors' confidence in the economy as well. A country with a high debt to GDP ratio is not a favorable place to invest your money.
Right.
It discourages foreign investment. The borrowing cost is going to go up. You are going to experience what we call credit rating downgrade. You remember Ghana was downgraded at a point.
Yeah,
to risk default status. We went into the junk status. Creditors, before they give out money to you, would want to know your status. What kind of borrower are you? Are you one that defaults on your payments, or you are one that, as it were, you are able to repay your debt on time? What kind of borrower are you? And that encourages further borrowing to you. Otherwise, we are not going to get anything. And we live in an era now where, for instance, Ghana going in for a loan would not use the country as a collateral. No, that we've gone beyond collateralization of debt.
Right.
Otherwise, then the logical explanation would be that, if we are not able to pay, then they should come and take Ghana. But no, Ghana is for no man. Ghana is for all of us.
Right.
And maybe the final thing is that it will also lead to macroeconomic instability, thereby increasing inflation and the rate of currency depreciation.
Okay, let's also move to policy recommendations, and I want you to make some recommendations for our debt sustainability. I hope that's fine.
I can,
right.
Based on the data.
All right. What measures should government take to manage our debt effectively?
Fiscal consolidation. The fiscal side, I mean the government, the executive. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Should look at its spending and revenue generation efforts. There should be, we are faced with a good situation where the current president says he's going to govern this country with a lean government. And so far, so good. That is important. My brother, the evidence has shown that size of government is inimical to economic growth.
Right.
Size of government. The bigger the size of the government, the slower the growth potential of the economy. Because size of government translates into huge spending. And so fiscal consolidation is key. Enhance revenue generation, control your spending, expand the tax base, improve the tax net, improve tax compliance, and diversify the economy so that you are not just reliant on export earnings, so that you are not just reliant on earnings coming from cocoa, oil, and gold to be able to grow this economy. Broaden the tax net, invest in the production capacities or productive sectors of this economy so that they'll be able to bounce back and rope in some more income.
Right.
Create an enabling environment for private sector to thrive so that they can boost their productivity, thereby translating into their bottom line profitability.
Right.
What that will mean is that then governments can make more income from the taxes that these companies in the private sector are going to pay. Once that is done, you realize that the denominator, which is the national output or the GDP, would increase substantially.
Right.
At the same level of debt or even falling level of debt, that will translate into a lower debt to GDP ratio. So implement fiscal discipline, enhance your revenue generation, control your spending, promote economic growth, support industrialization, grow our agricultural base. Let us move away from the Gettysburg economy, where we produce raw materials and all that happens is that we export it to the rest of the world. Let's put some effort into industrializing our economy, adding significant value to our raw materials before we export them. We have said it time without number. How much the entire cocoa value chain delivers, and how Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are the major, they supply more than 50% of the world's cocoa product. Raw material, cocoa bean.
Right.
Yet they earn less than 5% of the entire value chain. That must stop. That has to be controlled. And you do that through industrialization. Industrialize the economy, add value to what we produce before we export them. And then we make the margins. The margins are made at the upper end of the curve and not at the base of the curve. And the upper end of the curve is where industrialization takes you to. If you are agrarian, you still want to be exporting primary products, then you'll be at the lower end of the curve and you will end little to nothing.
Right. I like that. I like what you just said. Now, let's finally talk on, before we go, I think we have just about 3 or 4 minutes to go. Can Ghana learn from other African countries that have successfully managed their debt?
Which other countries maybe do you have in mind?
Rwanda, Botswana, I think they have been able to maintain lower debt levels.
Yeah, Botswana's debt level is about 22%. it's important. I want to say them. And another country you mentioned was Rwanda.
Rwanda,
right?
Yeah.
Rwanda's debt level is quite high, and so maybe we may not want to focus on Rwanda. But probably there are some other countries we can look at. Botswana, yes. Guinea, 34%. Equatorial Guinea, 35%. In fact, Democratic Republic of Congo, 5%. Cameroon, 38%. These figures I'm mentioning, you can verify them from the IMF. Right. Chad, 32%. Comoros, 35%. So there are countries with really, in fact, let's not go far. Even our neighbors, Cote d'Ivoire, they are doing about 55%. Cote d'Ivoire, are they not our neighbors?
They are.
They are just sitting somewhere beside us, right?
Yeah.
Cote d'Ivoire, we are neighbors, are we not?
Of course we are.
Burkina Faso is also our neighbor. They are doing about 56%. Then Togo, 58%.
And
they are the
in
only
70s.
ones to fight something higher, like ours. And then we, 50, 79. Can you imagine? All our neighbors are doing pretty cool. We can learn a lot from them. We can learn a lot from them. Yes, so we can learn from them. We should focus on domestic revenue mobilization. We should go in for concessionary loans. Concessionary loans essentially are loans that do not cost much. When I say loans don't cost much, in other words, the interest on the loans are not very high. They are very small, usually between 0 and 1, 0 to 2%, something of that sort.
Right.
In that case, it's okay because your debt, debt servicing alone could be very high such that you may have to borrow to pay interest on another debt. Yeah. Imagine borrowing to pay for another borrowing. That is very, very interesting. And we should ensure strict fiscal discipline. I was talking about that earlier. And let's look at the long-term economic planning of this country. Where can we make the most money or income out of? What premium should we place on those sectors? What kind of investment should go in there? Let's not just think about tomorrow, which is next year, the next election, next 2 years. No, let us think about the future of this country because governance is a continuum. Ghana would live beyond the governance of NDC and MPP. Ghana is for all of us to preserve and protect. And so there should be some deliberate commitment to the prosperity of this country to the extent that we make some long-term investments that will yield well and mean well for this country in terms of our ability to deal with our debt distress issues. Right.
You mentioned that, we should prioritize long-term economic planning. I hope that will be done at the National Economic Dialogue. President Mahama 3 days ago set up a 7-member committee which will be chaired by renowned economist Dr. Ishmael Yamsing. And they are supposed to organize a high-level dialogue to foster consultation and consensus on policies essential for transforming Ghana into a high-growth, inclusive and resilient economy. And I think they have just 4 weeks to submit their report. Hopefully something good comes out of that. But I want to say a special thank you to you. Or you want to say something? Go ahead. Just before you go.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ima.
Right. The point I wanted to make is about the National Economic Dialogue. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right. And I am just optimistic, yet a bit cautious here. A good question that can be asked, has it happened before? It has happened.
Right.
We're all here at Royal Safety. And I've heard some people speak about it. Beyond the National Economic Dialogue, one of the things Ghana needs has to do with proper implementation of policy direction. Even if it hurts an individual's pocket, even if it hurts an individual's whatever. I don't want to mention specific things.
Right.
For us to be able to implement the things that we prefer as solutions to our long-standing issues is where the deal will be closed. Somebody has said, and I have heard it, and sometimes I'm tempted to align with it. If it comes to talking, if it comes to devising strategies, if it comes to making laws, talking, debating, among other things, you can count Ghana at the top. But when it comes to implementing those decisions, key policy directions, among other things, you will find Ghana nowhere close to it. And so for me, out of that, not only am I looking forward to solutions that will be preferred to move our country from one level of economic progress to the other, I'm looking at what implementation strategies will be meted out in addition to how soon, quickly are these strategies going to be implemented. What are the targets? So say in 5 years' time, we expect Ghana is going to get here. This is what we are going to do. Because of that, we set up this. They are going to work. This should not be across party lines. This is the future of the country that we are talking about. See, if Ghana was a business, maybe you let me not go there. Let me end it here.
All right, Ima, I want to say thank you to you. We are grateful that you joined us. I think today you shared some very good nuggets as always, and we are grateful that you joined us. Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
All right. So you're still tuned into Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM with me, Nietzsche Hammond. It's time for our roundtable discussion, and this morning we're going to talk about human relations at work and how it and you don't want to miss that conversation. We'll take a short musical break. When we return, my guest will be in studio and one other one will join me over the phone lines for this conversation. Stay tuned.
It's your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
101.9 FM with me, Ni Trebi Hammond. And this morning, we're going to talk about human relations at work. But just before that, I want to play something to you, and you should take a listen.
All lovers to feel the love this Valentine with Love A to Z on Zed FM.
We're bringing love to life in every way, whether it's a grand gesture or a simple story.
Share your love moments with us, dedicate your favorite songs, and win amazing prizes along the way.
Tune in to Love A to Z on Zed FM 101.9.
From Wednesday the 29th of January to Friday, February 14th, you'll have the chance of winning amazing prizes from interactions on all our social media channels.
From BBC to the brighter side with NYA the brand, and all the way to Highway 1019.
This Valentine, we'll make it every day a day to remember. Tune in, feel the love, and let us make your celebration unforgettable.
Well, of course, so Love is in the air on Z101.9 FM. You want to join us for Love A to Z, your ultimate guide to love and relationships. Now, from A to Z, we will explore it all. We're going to explore interaction, bonding, and commitment. Right here on Business Breakfast on Zed, the brighter side, and Highway 1019. You want to tune in every week and every day of the week, as we bring you expert advice, real life stories, and fun surprises. Now you can get interactive with us on our social media outlets, and you stand a chance of winning amazing giveaways from our able sponsors. So on Instagram, Facebook, and X, we are ZFMGH. This Valentine, we're making your day very unforgettable. All right, we get into our conversation this morning, and my guest is already in studio, seated and ready to have this conversation with me. And as I indicated earlier, we're talking human relations at work and its effect on workplace productivity. Now, behind every productive workplace is a network of human interactions that either drive success or creates obstacles. Now, from team collaboration to manager-employee relationships, the way people relate to one another plays a critical role in shaping workplace culture and determining productivity levels. In this episode, in today's conversation, we are going to explore the profound connection between human relations and workplace productivity. And we'll discuss how emotional intelligence, communication, conflict resolution skills contribute to a harmonious work environment. Whether you're an employee, a team leader, a business owner, this conversation will provide you some practical insights into workplace dynamics. How to improve your workplace dynamics and address challenges, and ultimately boost productivity through better human relations. Now, I have in studio with me Na Ameli Kofi, who is passionate about technology and its impact on the world of work. She's a human resource executive with over 18 years post-qualification human resource management experience and a senior corporate lawyer. Her work experience has mainly been with high-tech, multi-industry and multinational organizations in Ghana, giving her in-depth knowledge of tech innovations in Ghana, really. Now, she currently works for Rankard, a leading AI and graph software technology company, as Vice President Corporate Services. And in this role, she's responsible for human capital management, corporate compliance, and legal affairs. She believes in giving back to society and is a volunteer with her alma mater's Alumni Association, her church, the Planned Parenthood Association of Ghana, and other causes associated with youth empowerment, girl child education, and healthcare. She's an inveterate reader and an avid traveler, and continually searching for ways to match our interest. She's in studio with me this morning, Na Ameli. Good morning.
Good morning.
You have I'm doing very well. How about you?
Very well, thank you.
You have such a great profile. So another guest will be joining me over the phone lines, and she is Mrs. Veronica Nano, a member of the Institute of Human Resource Practitioners Ghana, with over a decade experience as a human resource and administrative coordinator with the National Council of Young Men's Christians Association, YMCA. She started as an associate member of the Institute of Human Resource Practitioners in 2019, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And Mrs. Nano is now a junior consultant of the Corporate Partners Limited and also a member of the Ghana Learning and Development Network. She's over the phone lines. Mrs. Nano, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm great, and you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well myself. Thank you.
Who am I speaking with, please?
This is Raphael.
Okay, right.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining us for this very important conversation. I'll start in studio and then I'll bring you in. Is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So now Ameli, one more time, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I know you. Interesting. I didn't know you were coming here this morning. Yeah. But it's so good to see you. The last time we met, you interviewed me.
Yes, I was on the other side of the
right. Today I am interviewing you. But so let's get into it right away. Now, what is the role of human relations in workplace productivity?
Okay, so
or basically in the workplace.
Right. So you have to know that workplaces are not about the buildings or the equipment; it's about the people, right? And how people at work interact with each other will either make that workplace a high performance one or a low performance one.
Right.
And most people spend a lot of time at work, so it's crucial for them to have good work relations, good human interactions. Otherwise, they check out, and once they check out, that affects the work. So that's the main importance of having good human relations
at work. Wow, great. Because people spend a lot of time at work.
Yes.
There's
I mean, so much so that you're either going to work, you're at work, or you're leaving work. And it's difficult to switch off, especially now that most of our work is done. It's not so physical, but it's cerebral, right? So most people are, even at home, constantly thinking about work. So how the relations are at work affects whether they'll switch off at 5, which is a mental switch. They just flip it off. Or they'll even continue thinking about ways to make the work better, even when technically they've closed.
Right. So let me go over the phone lines and speak to Mrs. Nano. Why are workplace relationships crucial for productivity and overall organizational success?
Okay, thank you, Ralph. I know that when employees feel valued and connected to their colleagues, they are more likely to be motivated, productive, and committed to the organization's goals. So strong workplace relationships can foster a sense of belonging and encourage open communication, which leads to increased collaboration, innovation, and problem solving. On the other hand, if there's poor relationships, that can lead to conflict, low morale, and decreased productivity. So ultimately, it impacts the bottom line, that is productivity.
Right. So I want to also ask, we're just trying to understand human relations in the workplace generally. How have human relations in the workplace evolved over the years?
Okay, so if I could take that, the concept of human relations has come a long way. In the past, the focus was primarily on its efficiency and productivity, with less emphasis on the human element. However, over time, organizations have realized that investing in their employees and creating a positive work environment is essential for long-term success. And this shift has been driven by various factors that include demographics, technological advancement, and a greater understanding of the psychological and emotional needs of employees. So we have come a long way on this matter.
Right. Now, you want to add something to that?
Well, I'll say that, for instance, currently most workplaces have at least 3 or 4 generations of employees, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, managers, leaders especially, have had to learn how to manage the needs of each generation of workers in order to make sure that the relationships that are fostered in these workplaces are good relationships, right? Because there's the tendency, right, to be so focused on productivity, right, that instead of driving productivity up, you rather drive it down. That is where, as Veronica was saying, where you are only looking at output, right? It's where you forget that the people are your input that's going to get you the output.
Yeah.
So you either micromanage them or you create a toxic atmosphere where there's too much competition, for instance, to the point where people are not even able to share ideas because they have the I need to do better than you mentality. And at the end of the day, there are no wins, right? Because we each need each other to keep pushing the organization's goals. So I'll say that's me.
Right. So there's a need for collaboration. And
definitely.
Once there's competition, it affects that. Now, what
so
are the
competition is good. Healthy competition is good.
Okay.
So there's healthy competition and unhealthy competition, right? Healthy competition is where this everybody's trying to innovate and you are rewarding people for collaborating, teamwork, innovating together, and you're not just rewarding one person because they're giving you so much and you're not rewarding the others who possibly contributed to that idea, right? So when you start rewarding, let's say, a few people rather than the whole team for things that have been executed, right? And you're not tracking properly how the productivity came about, you end up sometimes even rewarding the wrong people, which then creates a culture where nobody wants to share ideas with the next person, and you then get an unbalanced workplace, right? So at some point, the workplace loses out.
Right.
So.
Right. Now, what are the key elements in, of a positive workplace environment or relationship? The key elements.
Okay, so trust is a big factor, right? You have to trust your colleague. You've got to trust that your leader has your back, right? You have to have enough trust to own up to failures when you do fail, right? And you have to trust that the skills you bring to the work are going to get you what you need, such that if at any given point you realize you need more skills, you have to be able to open up to your team members. Can you help me? Can you teach me? Can you show me how you did it? All right. Can you show me the right way? And if there's not enough trust in a work system, you will find that people will get, if you like, quieter and quieter, and at some point nothing will get done right. So that's one, right? 2 is a high capacity, right? So when you have people who are willing to learn all the time, right, you have a lot more skills, knowledge being shared and being learned. And sometimes we have what we call continuous learning and continuous improvement, right? Where the continuous learning is being applied to improvements within the workplace, both to processes and to projects, etc. And then you, of course, then you get better outcomes because you are learning from your mistakes, you are learning from best practice around you, and all of that makes the productivity better. The other thing I'll say is collaboration, right? So collaboration is not just, we have to work on a task together, right? right? It is also being able to understand a person's strengths and weaknesses and being able to harness those, and also to make up for the gaps such that you mitigate the likelihood of those weaknesses impacting the whole team. So those are some of the things to look at.
Okay, so trust, collaboration, and open-mindedness, basically.
Open-mindedness,
yes. Sorry,
Veronica.
Yeah. Veronica, do you have something to add?
Yes, I would add conflict resolution. And that if we are able to address our disagreements constructively, and then we find acceptable solutions together, that will help to make our workplace relationships successful. And also, if we have open and honest communication, we should be able to feel free, comfortable sharing our ideas, concerns, and feedback. You realize when Madam was speaking, she mentioned that now we have our 3 generations in the workplace. So if there's that vast gap between maybe a subordinate and a supervisor, the tendency is that one will feel like the father figure or that kind of, and may not necessarily be free in expressing himself, and even can keep some ideas that if he or she has not that would have helped the success of the organization. So we should feel free and have open and honest communication in the workplace.
Right. Now let's talk about communication and emotional intelligence, which I think are two very important elements when it comes to relationships, generally human relationships. How does effective communication play a role in workplace relationship? Veronica.
Yes. So effective communication plays a very vital role in human relations. So communication is not only about speaking and getting across the information, it also means getting the right feedback. Yes. So if we are able to understand the other person well, then we can give the right feedback.
Right.
So if communication can be effective, we both should understand the situation in which we are talking about, and then be able to give the expected feedback. There's a point where we have to be in the shoes of the other person to really understand the situation and be able to stick to it. So understanding and sharing the feelings of others fosters empathy and compassion. It enables individuals to connect with their colleagues on a deeper level. That builds trust and provides support when needed.
Okay, now.
Well, I'll say communication is the key, mainly. This is because we're talking about workplace productivity, and productivity is usually coming out of targets, achieving targets, isn't it? So how the targets are communicated, as Veronica was saying, how everybody understands what the work that's supposed to be done, how the people working on particular items understand each other, and then how you even relate to each other by when you are either speaking or sending communication across, let's say via email, right? Your tone, the words you use, etc., will determine how effective that communication is, right? And remember, as human beings, we have emotions, we have feelings, right? And you can't disconnect that from work. So in as much as you try at work to be dispassionate, right? You do need to be passionate about the work to succeed at it. So how you're spoken to, how you understand what is being communicated to you, how you respond, right? And the feedback that goes either way, whether it's constructive or not, affects really how the relations go. Okay? And the better everybody is at communicating, the more candid you are, the more able you are to take constructive feedback, the more able you are to communicate clearly what must be achieved, the better the productivity will be.
Right. And how can how can misunderstandings and communication gaps impact workplace productivity?
Oh, you don't want to know. It's a huge hole you can just fall into. So let me give you an example, right? So let's say Veronica and I are going to work on a project, right? And prior to this, we've worked on a previous project where we didn't see eye to eye. Okay, so there's that slight. It's an underlying factor already. Then we go work on this new project, and then there's a fundamental issue, right? That let's say we have a flare up over.
Right.
Now, what will happen? Okay, is till we get to an understanding, till the conflict is resolved, no work gets done.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So, for however long it takes to resolve that issue, right? That project is just, if not at a standstill, it's crawling along, and that's detrimental to productivity. So misunderstanding has a big role to play.
Are there some typical examples that you've experienced?
I'll say misunderstanding about what role each person is to play on a team. Okay, can sometimes happen where you think you are the lead and actually the lead is assigned to another person, especially when you are not there when the roles were assigned. You know, and there are some people who are possibly used to being the lead on projects, and when that is flipped around, they often still try to take over, and it does create some conflicts. Okay, so I've experienced that, and it's not fun because the other person may not be a perfect leader, nobody is, but once they've been assigned the project lead, it means they either have in-depth knowledge of the project or they have some skills that will move the project better than you. Okay, so at that point, the conflicts must quickly be resolved so that the right person leads. Yes.
Okay, we'll talk more about how you can manage to work with somebody like that. I mean, when those...
if I can come in here.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
sure,
please.
sure, Veronica.
Yes, so the conflict is also likely to just have missed the opportunity because of the communication gap that can lead to missed opportunity for innovation, like Madam Rice said. So instead of we seeing greater opportunities ahead of us because we do not understand each other, or there's an underlying factor where I think that maybe I am better off than the other person, or the other person doesn't seem to understand anything, we will miss opportunities when it comes to us because we will not see them. And that would breed negative work environment. I will not feel comfortable working in that kind of environment, and nobody would, I'm sure of that. So that can plague the environment with that toxic and stressful thing, if you can imagine that. And this can lead to decreased job satisfaction. That's when you get up in the morning and you don't want to go to work because your other colleague is going to be there, which you do not see eye to eye with.
Well, of course, also body language, facial expression, tone of voice can sometimes communicate more than words.
Sure.
How do non-verbal communication non-verbal communication cues influence workplace dynamics?
It's interesting. So, well, we were taught this in school. So there was a way to teach people how to work, right? Let's go back to maybe the 60s, 70s, and they call that sitting with nanny, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm new at work and I come, instead of teaching me how to do the job, especially on the factory floors, for instance, they'll get me to sit next to someone who's done it before, right? So guess what? If this person has negative energy or is not happy with their work, as they are teaching me how to do the work, they'll transfer the negativity. Okay.
Yeah.
So even though I'm totally new, you see that in a very short time, I'll also start having the same attitude to the work. It's too stressful, it's too tiring, it's backbreaking, right? And of course, then I'll not give my all.
Right.
Okay. So, and possibly Nani never really said anything, but how she's doing the work, her size, And then every time she sent, the speed with which you go, right? The speed at which you do this work. So she keep making little comments, or her body language, every time she's given a task, her whole demeanor changes, right? And all of that will eventually affect the whole team, right? So in psychology, they have something they call neuro-linguistic programming, right? If you stay with someone long enough, you pick up their cues and they affect you, okay? Unless, it's very difficult to be programmed otherwise. If you spend long enough with one person in the same room, if you had a mirror in this room, maybe you and your colleague, and you looked into it at a particular point, you realize that you all have the same posture. Okay, this leads to sometimes you go to work and everybody on your team is wearing the same color, right? It affects all of you eventually. Right. So the more somebody gives an attitude, right, you end up either giving an attitude back or absorbing the same negative energy and having the same negative attitude. And of course, that eventually affects, especially if you have a small team, it's very dangerous. You get to a point where everybody is either uncomfortable, unless you get one person who says, no, I'm going to break away. Right. Because of groupthink. It's a very worrying thing to have. I'm sure Veronica can tell you some more about it. Yeah.
So, Ralph?
Yeah, Veronica.
Especially for first impressions, non-verbal cues often form the basis for first impressions. Just like you meet somebody the first time, you do not know the person from anywhere, but the mere fact that the person looked at you in a certain way or gave you a certain handshake or the otherwise gives you the impression about this person. If there's lack of eye contact and the person in a way lacks some confidence, you think that, oh, you have made your impression already about this person. So it's the same thing happening in the workplace. And then it also builds the rapport that will maintain between the work colleagues, like Madam Riley said. Yeah. So if I have that impression about you because of maybe the first impression I had with the non-verbal cues that took place when it first met, is going to continue in that manner. Right. But I realize that there are some cultural sensitivities because there are differences in some verbal communication when it comes to culture. In certain cultures, when you're nodding, it means yes, or in agreement. In others, it's different. So when you find yourself in an environment where there are different cultures, there's a need for you to understand all these things before you even put out any gesture. Because now the recent understanding that we are mostly prone to use our right hand in doing things when they do not care whose hand is doing what. So it becomes very essential that if you are an employee, you should understand all these things, especially in an international setting where you have other individuals from different cultures coming together, whether in person or virtual. All these things need to play and help in building a solid relationship in the workplace. If you understand.
Right. So if you're an employee, then I don't think it's just about employees. Even the leaders in the companies, can also influence that. Okay, we are just about 10 minutes after 9, and this is Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM with me, Trevi Hammond. And we're having a conversation on human relations and how it impacts work productivity. And I'm speaking to Na Ambeli, who has a lot of experience in HR management, and also Veronica Nano, Mrs. Veronica Nano, who is over the phone lines with me this morning. If you want to join the conversation, you can WhatsApp us on 0544-321019, 0544-321019. You can ask all your questions, drop a comment, or make any remarks at all. You can also check us on Instagram, Facebook, and X. We are live on our Facebook platform at ZFMGH, and also on YouTube at Z Multimedia. You can join the conversation over there. Okay, let me come back to you. We're talking about leaders. Yes. Of course, some leaders inspire trust, and they are able to make sure that teams work together very well. But there are some also that like you rightly mentioned, bring on board competition and rivalry among team members. How can leaders or managers foster strong relationships in their teams at the workplace? Let me come to Na.
Right. So one of the key things to remember is that leaders are made, not born.
Right.
So most leaders have learned their leadership skills either by watching others, by reading about them, or by working with them. Okay. So they tend to transfer. So you may have an innate leadership or management style, but you pick up certain styles as well, and there are different leadership styles or different management styles for each type of organization based on the culture you want to build, right? Now, for a leader to build a strong, healthy culture, you must take away certain things, right? You must take away nepotism, favoritism, right? You must be seen to be fair or known to be fair, right? You must not listen to gossip, right? So if you as a leader, every time I can tell you, oh, Veronica did this, oh, and then I go to Veronica, Raf did this, and you never say anything to me that you cannot do that. You don't give me a warning, right? Eventually, things will travel and people will say, oh, I spoke to him about it and he did nothing about it, right? So people will think, okay, then it's fine. And all of a sudden, you find more people spending their time gossiping than doing any work, right? The other thing leaders must be very conscious of is coaching their whole team.
Right.
Okay. Yes, you will identify some high performers that maybe for succession planning you will spend a little bit more time with than the others, right? But you must not spend too much time with certain people and neglect others. Because you should be building the whole team, okay, as a leader. Now, one of the key leadership styles that has been shown to build most productive cultures, okay, is the servant leadership management, where you are not looking so much as to just get things out of your workers, right, or your team members, but you are looking to build them up, and in building them up and by helping them, you all get better productive outcomes. Right. So those are some of the things leaders have to look at. Yes.
Okay. And you talk about leaders and their relationship with employees.
Yes.
As in having somebody too close to you and all of that. What have you to say about friendships, a leader and a worker? I mean, not everybody else, but has a particular person they are very close to. What have you to say about that? Do you think it affects other people?
Sometimes it does. So it depends on, friendships can be managed and in such a way that they are not detrimental, right, to the whole team. So remember that human beings are naturally attracted to particular human beings based, especially at work, not because of favoritism or anything, but because maybe they make their life easier, right? And so sometimes they may seem to be very good friends, but maybe they actually, they just spend a lot more time together because the other person is delivering on their outcome. So they keep giving them more stuff to do, right? So then, of course, there's more reporting and more talking to each other, okay? Also, when there is a certain amount of similarity,
right?
Okay, you will tend to see that the leader may spend some more time with one person than the other. Now, the greatest risk to having, if you like, a leader who is tight friends with one member of the team and not the rest, right, is that at some point favoritism will show up or bias will show up.
Right.
Okay. So often we advise leaders to have some boundaries. Okay, to set up some barriers where you self-check or you get somebody to point out certain things to you that you have to be careful, right? So, for instance, in one of the places I worked, you are not allowed to give gifts to your manager, right? Except when, of course, there's the Christmas stuff that everybody puts in a box and you take out.
Right.
But like you can't come to work and say, oh, I bought this for you. Oh, I bought that for you, right? Because it will create a bias eventually. So those are some of the things to look out.
Okay. All right. Veronica, yeah.
Yes, I want to ask you what can foster the positive relationships. What leaders can do to foster positive relationships. I think leaders should provide opportunities for collaboration, as Madam has said, and they should recognize and appreciate contribution. That is one thing that I don't know if it's Ghanaian or, because I know some other African countries like Nigerians, they easily appreciate others. But if you want to foster that kind of relationship, you should be able to recognize and appreciate contribution, not always seeing the negative. If they are positive, when you see them, appreciate them and congratulate them. And then address conflict constructively. Leaders should be able to address conflict promptly and constructively, not waiting for it to linger on, creating other things, making the environment, the work environment more conducive and for others to work. And then they should also promote work-life balance. That's currently that can be done by setting reasonable workload, encouraging growth, and respecting personal timeline.
All right. Now, Veronica, you could also add something to what Na said. So she's talked about favoritism and nepotism as some of the challenges that leaders must deal with. Do you have some other ones to talk about?
Okay, so I have a very idea that we can work together. We don't need to be friends. So I keep that in my head that I don't need to be your friend to work with you.
Right.
So, to avoid the biases and favoritism, it's better we keep the professional mind. Do what I'm here to do, or what I'm paid to do. So that if even you don't like me, you have to work with me.
Does that help you?
Is that okay? I thought she was still speaking. That's okay. So let me come back to you now. How do strong workplace relationships contribute to team performance and collaboration? Now, I know that once people are together, they are able to solve problems effectively and all of that. How do strong workplace relationships contribute to team performance and collaboration?
So it can go either way, right? So if the relationship is so strong and there's, let's say, an opinion leader, they can lead everybody astray.
Right.
Right.
I get it. Okay.
They can lead everybody astray.
Yeah.
So one of the ways to ensure that those relationships are being built in a positive way, right, is to, if you like, direct the conversation. Okay. So every workplace has what we call the grapevine, right?
Yeah.
Which is the communication beyond what the formal communication
is. Yeah.
Okay. So in a workplace, one of the ways to make sure that is that you are feeding the grapevine with the right stuff, the right policies, the what can be done here, what cannot be done here, right? Such that if someone, for instance, even in a strong team, strong bonded team, someone did the wrong thing, they will all not rally behind the wrong thing and cover it up, but they'll speak up and say, no, you did wrong. Okay. If you have a team like that, right, you are more likely to get better productivity, right, because they recognize their flaws, they're able to point them out, and they're able to mitigate them.
Right.
Okay. Now, remember earlier I spoke about the danger of groupthink, where they're all thinking the same. One of the ways to make sure that you have such strong relations, but it's fostering better productivity, is to make sure that each person recognizes their key skills and understands how they contribute to the end game, right? Because when you create a workplace, you create it to make impact, either on revenue or social impact, right?
Yeah.
So the productivity of that workplace should be making a strong impact on your bottom line or on your top line all the time, right? So you cannot create a situation where the strong relations is about chilling, right? Which is possible,
Right.
where the team is all about Friday, let's go and have a
Friday,
KK party, and they all go and eat together. Tuesday, let's go and have a Friday yam party, and they all go and eat
Right.
together. That strong relationship should also be about your deliverables,
Okay.
how we are harnessing our skills to deliver this, and how each time we are on point. And wherever we are not on point, we can pivot quickly as a team.
Right.
Okay, so those are some of the things to look at, right? And you can do this by encouraging them to learn together. So for some teams, for instance, they share articles, they share videos, they share. It becomes the norm to when you find a new tool that is that makes you do your work quicker. You are able to share this. For instance, in tech, sometimes people discover a new programming language that can deliver much more software than it will have done before. In a strong team, they'll say, hey guys, even though we've been working this way, can we check this out? Can we work on this? And can we see how it will deliver? And you see that within a quick time, the whole team pivots because everybody has learned it. Right. So that's the kind of strong relationship you are looking to foster. Okay. So.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, what role does mentorship play in all of this?
Right. So mentorship is necessary for most people to ensure that they are actually following the career path they wanted to follow. Right. It also ensures that if there's a capacity gap, right, often that is closed quickly. Okay, so we have coaching and mentorship, right? They normally work hand in hand. Okay, coaching often is short term, mentoring is normally over a longer term. So let's say I don't understand how to present over the equipment you use.
Right.
If I came in, I say, Raf, can you coach me so I know how to do this, right? So you say, okay, we'll have coaching sessions, let's say 1 hour every day for a month, and by the end of the month, I should have learned it, right? However, delivery style cannot be learned in that short time, right? Understanding gaining the knowledge behind how you do your work is you need more of a mentor, right? Who has done it before, okay? And sometimes you need a mentor who may not have done it before, but has the transferable skills to show you how you can get there, right? So they can point you to things to learn, people to learn from. They can point you to how you're doing your work. They can call you out if you're doing the wrong thing, right? And it has to be a respectful relationship, okay? And there has to be boundaries, right? Because there's the danger of mentors getting too close to their mentees, right? So often in workplace mentoring, there has to be boundaries where it is clear that the mentorship is about your work life. Yes, there may be some private life, but it's not focused on your private life. It is only the parts of your private life that impact your work life, right? And it's literally like hand-holding somebody to achieve a particular level. And after that, you may no longer be the mentor they need. They might need a new mentor. So mentoring is key in building these strong relationships. Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me come to Veronica. Veronica, let's talk on conflict resolutions. Now, of course, at the workplace, conflict is inevitable. Whether you like it or not, people will have challenges with one another, even with themselves. Yeah. So, Veronica, what are some of the causes of conflict in the workplace?
Okay. So it's good to say conflict is in every person. It's a natural part of any workplace or any environment. The key is how it is managed. And so we see that managers need to address them promptly and fairly. Ignoring them only allows them to fester and escalate. So you first create a safe space for both parties to explain their perspective without interruption. After listening actively, you try to understand the root cause of the conflict, not just the topic. And then you facilitate a constructive dialogue, focusing on finding a solution, not assigning blame, like some used to do. So mediation skills are invaluable in these situations. And then the goal is win-win, not that somebody feels have lost the discussion or bit altogether. Or at least a compromise one can live with. So documenting the resolution is also important to ensure accountability and prevent future occurrences. That's why we have policies and procedures. So these have to be laid down in the workplace especially, so that we know that when it happens like this, these are the steps we are going to take. And if once it's settled and one party feels aggrieved, this is the next step to follow. That we have to maybe write seek for redress or something. Once they are laid down in that policy, you don't have to treat us as one person will be treated different from the other. But we are all following the same procedure because that is what we have all agreed as an organization to do. So in handling conflict, this is what I think is
right.
what
Okay.
usually most organizations do.
So you have given us the solutions. I just wanted us to even start from basically the causes. What are the things that causes some of them? Maybe I should come to now.
Okay.
Right. So there's misunderstandings. There's the ego factor, where, for instance, you assign a task to somebody and they feel it's below them. It may create a conflict. There's the delivery factor, where, let's say we're on a team and we're working on something. Everybody's working hard, and one team member is just not handling their business well, and they're under delivering. Right? And when that happens, of course, there'll be conflict, because they'll get to a point where that person is holding everybody back, and there'll definitely be an exchange of words. There's also personal interactions, right, where this runs into from bullying, harassment, all of that, okay, where people feel they're not being heard. For instance, they feel a negative impact, they will react in a particular way, and often that will bring about a certain level of conflict. Okay, and then personality, right? Some personalities clash, right? So, for instance, you have a firebrand team member and you have a very calm team member, right? Of course, their work styles are likely to be different, and the calm one will think, "Oh, you do too much. You're too loud," and the firebrand one will also think, "Oh, you're either lazy, or you seem very unbothered when there's fire on the mountain and you are just very calmly sitting down and everybody's running around and you are just calm," right? That also creates a certain level of conflict. So the energy, even in a team, right, can also bring a certain amount of conflict. If you have a lot of crisis happening in an organization, if that crisis is not managed well, it will eventually lead to a certain amount of conflict. Yes, and then of course, then you have to address it the way Veronica has told us, where you have a certain amount of arbitration, you have a certain amount of negotiation, you have a certain amount of active listening, active dialogues between all the parties to find the root cause and then find a way to resolve it. Okay, because if not, the danger is you actually find a lot of people leaving your organization, and often the non-toxic ones are the ones who leave first, and they leave you with the toxic ones to manage yourself. Yes, so leaders and team members always have to be very cognizant of this.
Now, so before we got into the conversation, really, there's a segment on the show we call Business Brief, and I shared about Google. I don't know whether you were listening before you go here, but I shared about Google. Now, so Google had a challenge like that where people couldn't express themselves. They couldn't share their consent and all of that. And so they created the TGIF, which is Thank God It's Friday, weekly meetings where you get to speak your mind, talk, ask any CEO any question, ask any manager any question. And that is why I'm coming to ask this thing. But it's about 30 minutes after 9:30, and this is Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM. And we're having a conversation on human relations and its effect on workplace productivity. And I'm speaking to Namele, who's in studio with me, and Veronica. Nano, Mrs. Veronica Nano, who is over the phone lines with me. You can join the conversation. You can send us a WhatsApp if you want to be part of this conversation. 0544-321019, 0544-321019. Or you could also check us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH, and send your questions, your comments, and any other thing you want to let us know. All right. So just still on that. So I shared that particular case study, we can call it. How can organizations create that space where people can be able to air their views, concerns, and what have you? Let me go to Veronica, and then I'll come back to you now. Vero? Yeah.
Come again.
So I'm asking, how can organizations create an environment where employees feel safe to express their concerns?
Okay. So organizations can make the environment safe where employees can feel free to share their ideas or thoughts by making them certain policies and procedures that allows them to freely air their views. So I have a background where you could mention colleagues' name you call them by their first name.
Right.
There's respect, all right, but people are not really enthused about the title. So you have to say Esther, Professor, and all that. But you realize that when you mention someone's name by the first name, you have a certain platform that you can feel free to talk to the person on. The person could be your provider, your boss. But because you have the opportunity to flow on that level, it doesn't come with disrespect in you because we are focusing on that in the environment. So it gives us a platform to be able to communicate freely, share our ideas and ideals that would help in the achieving the goals of the organization. So that platform is given. Also, I think organizations can also give more collaborative opportunities where people are able to work together in teams or in subgroups, that they are able to work in small silos on projects, not the bigger, wide environment where everyone and then no one feels responsible for something. But because they are that small team, maybe a team of 5, a team of 4, who have a task to do, we all have various responsibilities that we have to do, which makes us responsible to ensure that the work really goes on. So in that manner, that kind of bureaucracy, that kind of hierarchical things that we do in some organizations would minimize. And the employees will feel free to contribute to the success of the organization. I think Madam would answer to it.
Yeah. Nah.
Okay, so I believe you were asking how organizations can create safe spaces. Right?
Exactly.
So, for instance, like the open forums you spoke about earlier, in some organizations we also have an anonymous feedback. So system. It can be a box, it can be online, and so you can just go and send whatever feedback, etc. And one of the things is to be sure that you are not victimizing the people who do speak up, right? So if you want to encourage employees to speak up, you must create an atmosphere where they are candid and they don't feel to be victimized for speaking up their minds, right? So like Veronica was saying, you can have like policies like a whistleblower policy, like a safe space policy where it's encouraged and you can make it a principle of your business, right? The candor, the constructive feedback. And so when you have like the open forums, for instance, it can be a weekly one, like you said. It can be monthly. It can be quarterly, right? And especially for now, where a lot of us are working remotely or hybrid, right? There needs to be a certain amount of active engagement that allows people to feel that, okay, if I told my manager X, or if we were all together in a team and I said this, nobody will jump out at me for not being a good worker, right? Because it's affecting how we all work, right? So, for instance, there might be a process that is kind of delaying everybody, but nobody wants to speak up to it, because when you speak, you'll be tasked with changing it, right? There has to be room for enabling people to make changes if they need to, right? So that then you see the people feel more empowered to speak up, to make changes, etc. And then you find that you have more open communication and better productivity.
Right. Now, but what do you do when the people are still not speaking up? Say, create an open forum, ask people, because I know meetings, there are sometimes meetings where people come and they are given opportunity to speak and nobody says anything. How do you handle that as a leader?
Most of the time, there's either a fear of victimization, a fear of the Japanese call it loss of face. Okay, so nobody wants to speak and somebody will think negatively of them.
Right.
So that is where the anonymous part comes in, where you create suggestion boxes, etc. Right? It's a build-up. So in an organization that has previously not been able to share much, right? You start from anonymous before you come to one where everybody can be open, right? The Americans have something they call a rumble, right, where we are able to speak about possibly non-related stuff in a vulnerable way. Okay, so you as the leader yourself have to be vulnerable. If the leader is seen to be tough as leather and does not share even the challenges they themselves are having and does not speak up when they see negativity, right, everybody will clam up. Right. Because they don't want to be the one seen to be soft, and you always need pandering to, and as for you always have issues, right? So everybody ends up climbing up, right? And then that creates even more issues. So,
okay, let me come to now. You want to talk about the future of workplace relationships. Yeah. How will human relationships evolve in the next decade?
There are different schools of thought on that, right? Okay. So there's a school of thought that says we'll all become so self-absorbed that eventually there will actually be no relations at all. Right. There's another school of thought that thinks that we'll all be in an alternative reality environment, so people can create facades or avatars, and the avatars will do the talking for us. And then there's the school of thought that thinks that because of all the collaboration tools available now, right, there's the potential to do more together. Okay, because you can speak to people in real time over whatever network. It can be on the internet, it can be face-to-face. There are more opportunities for us to actually have better relations, okay, and take away the facade and be more vulnerable. Okay, so after COVID, most people realize that, hiding it and pretending that everything is well is not necessarily the way to go, right? And vulnerability breeds engagement, right? Right. Because once you open up, the persons around you see what needs to be done. But if you don't open up, we're all in it together, right? So in the future, we are expecting that, yes, there'll be the challenge of hiding behind technology, but then people also haven't found themselves to some extent, will find it easier to open up and there'll be better relations because there are so many platforms to engage on.
Right. Now, so with hybrid work.
I think Veronica had a contribution.
Oh, okay, let me go to Veronica.
Yes.
All right, sure. Let's hear you, please.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was asking that with hybrid work becoming the norm, of course, physical interactions are gradually decreasing. And how does this shift impact human relations? And what strategies do you think businesses can use to maintain strong workplace connections?
Okay, so connections mean when sometimes you have to work remotely or come to the office in person. Okay, so there's a need for us to have that kind of communication. It should always be important to us that we need to connect, whether remotely or physically. So, just a minute, I think I have some.
Okay, let me come to. I think Veronica is trying to get something. So let me come to you now.
So hybrid work brings its own challenges, right? The way most organizations are trying to maximize it is to use more communication channels, right? So, for instance, in an average workplace now, which uses, let's say, Microsoft Teams or Google Workspace, right? You will also have additional communication channels on, for instance, WhatsApp, on Slack, okay, or let's say on ClickUp, right? That allows us all to see what we are working on all the time, and that allows us to call people up whenever we need them, right? So, for instance, some organizations have either a weekly check-in or a daily check-in, okay, and an end-of-day catch-up or an end-of-week catch-up. And that allows a certain amount of engagement whilst also preserving the private space people sometimes need to focus and concentrate. So you're not in meetings all the time, right? Because when you are remote or hybrid, okay, it's possible that you may never meet your coworker. Okay, because you come on, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they come on Tuesday, Thursday, right? So the only way to make sure that you are constantly talking to each other is by collaborating on all the tools available, okay? And then for some organizations, you try as much as possible to throw in some fun days. So go out for a movie, go out for a meal together, team events, team parties, occasionally, so that you actually still do get to meet physically at some point, because we're still human beings, we're still physical. Okay, so in as much as the virtual helps us, we occasionally need to meet physically to even picture in your mind, oh, this is how so-and-so looks now. And I mean, I've had team members that were engaged and I never saw them in a whole year till we had a team event. And I was working with them, talking to them all the time. And when we eventually met, we were like, oh, okay. So you've seen pictures of them, you've seen them in virtual meetings, but when you meet people physically, the engagement kicks up a notch, right? So those are all ways to keep the communication going there and to build up the relationships.
Right. Okay, let me come back to Veronica. Hello, Vero. Okay, I'm trying to get Vero, but unfortunately. So let me come back to you.
That's fine.
Now, there are a lot of young people, Gen Zs, younger millennials who are entering the workplace with different expectations, different communication styles. How can businesses ensure that intergenerational workplace relationships remain strong and productive?
Okay, so there are different ways to do that. Okay, so in some organizations, they do what they call personality assessments, right? And then they get people to share the assessments, right? So people know that, okay, this person works this way, they think better this way, okay? And in some organizations, they've created interesting spaces. They have, let's say, part of the office where there's a lot of activity for those who like working in activity-based environment. Then there are quiet spaces or quiet rooms, right, where you can maybe go for an hour or two and just have focus when you need to be quiet, right? And then, of course, there are larger forum meeting places like canteens and stuff where there's more people. And some people can actually work in a canteen with the fox clicking everything, so they don't mind, right? And so when you create spaces that foster relationships where people, I mean, will talk to each other, right? So in HR, we have an interesting thing we call, currently I think they are called fireside chats, but they used to be water cooler chats, right? So when someone's going to make a cup of tea, they're going for a glass of water. Whoever they will meet there, you can't just take the glass of water and walk away.
Right.
You will at least say a hello, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, virtual makes it a little bit more challenging to do that, but it's still possible. Okay. So those you look at what does each generation need. What are how can we bridge the gaps between either generation, right? And you try, you can't do it all. I mean, I haven't seen a workspace that's been able to do all of it, right? But you create spaces where there's enough understanding about the experiences of each generation that they're able to work together, right? So yes, the work styles might be slightly different. Okay, but in a workplace, it's about professionalism, right? And what is professionalism? Delivering on time, appearing when you say you will appear, right? Ensuring that you are keeping your communication clean, etc. And those are principles. So once those principles are established, what is left is the flex between the generations and how they approach those principles, really, right? So you establish some rules, you establish the spaces in which those rules work, and you try to foster engagement, and eventually you'll find that the impact on all the generations is actually positive. So the younger ones give the older ones energy, the older ones give the younger ones their experience, and they work together. Right.
Well, we are just a quarter to 10, actually. And this is Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM with me, Nitrebi Hammond. And this morning, our conversation is centered on human relations at work and its impact on workplace productivity. And I'm speaking to Naameli, who has a lot of experience in HR management, and also Veronica, who is also in the space. Now, Veronica, let me come back to you. How does prioritizing human relations prepare organizations for long-term success?
Hello, Rob.
Yes. Hello, Veronica.
Yes, Rob.
Yes, I'm asking that how does prioritizing human relations prepare organizations for long-term success?
Okay. So human relations we mentioned is key. So if any organization wants to be successful, and that is the goal of every organization to be successful, then we have to make it important that we take care of the humans in the organization. So in that manner, then anything that concerns or everything that concerns the relationship in the organization should be very important to the employer. So that if they are comfortable, if they feel at ease, if they are at peace in the organization, then they'll be able to produce as expected or deliver as expected. So your question of how human relations,
how prioritizing human relations prepare organizations for long-term success?
It gives the employees the opportunity to really plan their success. Because there's opportunity for growth, where you know that from this point, I know I'm going to just end. I start as an officer, have an opportunity to move on, and there are avenues for me to learn and equip myself so that I can get to that expected end. It's even possible for me to get another role in addition to what I am doing.
Right.
So I may come in as a lower grade person. In 5-10 years, I'll be with the seniors or the big boys. So that makes me fit and happy to be in that organization because there's possibility for good.
Right. let me come back to nah.
Right. So, as Veronica said, human relations are the backbone, right? So, in prioritizing human relations, organizations have to deliberately foster that good relations, right? So, the mentoring, the coaching, forums, right? Deliberately creating career development paths for each of their team members, and generally a great employee experience. Employees stay in organizations where they have a good experience.
Okay.
Right? They will leave as soon as that experience goes sour. Right? So there's the term where they say employees don't leave jobs, they leave their managers. Right? So workplaces have to make sure that they are equipping managers to manage their teams properly. Right? They are leading in a way that improves the employee experience. And once that is happening, once you've put in place policies that take away bullying, harassment, backbiting, gossiping, etc., right, you will have a generally conducive environment that allows people to thrive. Okay, where you have constructive criticism, constructive feedback loops, and all of that. The environment is such that people are not afraid to work with you. Right. And because, as Veronica was saying, they see their growth potential and they see themselves growing, right, together with their team members. It's not like somebody has fast-tracked and somebody's lagging way behind, right? It's a let's go together thing, and they tend to be a lot of winning together. Yes, there'll be the faster performing people, but then you'll find that the majority will not be lagging behind. The majority will also be performing at a great pace.
Right. Okay, we're coming to the end, gradually coming to the end of our conversation this morning, and I believe that we've given a lot of value. You've come in with a lot of experience and all of that. Now, before we go, I want to ask, how can managers keep very good relationship while also being very strict on getting the job done?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's two things, right? One, it's about meeting your deadlines yourself.
Okay.
Because if you're a manager that keeps shifting the goalposts, your team members will realize that shifting the goalposts is acceptable, right? So they'll do what you are doing to your manager.
Right.
And if you are the, let's say, CEO, it's a culture you create, all right? The other thing is that as a manager, you have to be conscious about how you reward good behavior.
Right.
Good behavior being delivery of targets, right? Attitude. Okay. And you have to be conscious of bias, right? So once you are able to set in place the parameters in which your team is working, and you yourself as a manager, you are keeping to those parameters. Your team, remember the song "Follow the Leader." Teams tend to follow the leader. You've never heard of Eza Soka song? Check it out sometime. Right. Everybody's doing what the leader is doing. So if the leader is going to fall into a ditch, all of them will fall in the ditch. Right. So unless you get somebody who's brave enough to say, hey, we are going to fall into the ditch. Right. So the managers themselves have to be trained to recognize where their gaps are, right, and close those gaps quickly in order to be able to lead their team members.
Right.
Yes. And responsibility and accountability must cascade through the organization. It's not that the corporate target is only the manager's target, right? But it's cascaded so much that let's say the person who makes the tea knows that if I lost 1 teaspoon, it will cost X amount to replace, and that money could have been used to buy more paper or something for productivity. So everybody is conscious of their contribution, and we reward contribution, and we have merit-based reward, right? So everybody knows that there's not going to be nobody's going to do me any favors. Let's work together. Let's win together. Let's share in the win.
Right.
So that's it.
And let me come to Veronica. Wow, I mean, your points are very valid. Your points are very valid. But also, there are times where the manager wants to, address a particular conflict or maybe a particular situation to one of the employees, and then since then there's an acrimony. There's some sort of I mean, it affects their relationship basically. How can managers reconnect with the people when stuff like that happen? Let me go to Veronica. Hello, Veronica.
Hello, Ralph.
Yes. So I'm asking that sometimes managers tend to have issues with their employees and vice versa, especially when issues are addressed in a particular way that don't go right. How can managers reconnect with their employees when issues like that happen?
Okay. So when you're reconnecting with employees, you give them other opportunities to, say, redeem themselves, if I could put it that way.
Right.
So there could be another opportunity, another aspect given them where you guide them to be successful, and then you congratulate them for that.
Right.
It's not going to be a one-day thing. It has to be a gradual process, because it's just like you have fallen off from the person's maybe good side. So now to be on the same lane where we can comfortably work together, the trust must be built gradually. And so as you give others the opportunity, you have to give him or her the equal opportunity to also excel. And then you guide them to success. And in so doing, you be gradually drawing closer the relationship that used to be, and even make it better for you and that employee.
All right. Okay, let me also pick your mind on that now.
Right. So, as I said, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that has to happen, right? There's nothing wrong with the manager apologizing if they were in the wrong.
Right.
Right. Speaking to the subordinate and say, I realized that I didn't do this well. Can we reset? Being open about it and being willing to work together. What is it that needs to be done to work on to restore the relationship, right? Because once the person hasn't left, then there's the opportunity to restore that relationship and make sure that we get back to a productive level. Okay. So that's one of the things that can be done.
Okay, I think our time is fast spent, and we'll be wrapping up our conversation. Any final thoughts? Let me go to Vero, and then I come to you finally in studio. Vero, any final thoughts?
Yes. Okay. So now we are looking at the virtual or hybrid situation, and it has come to stay, whether we like it or not. So one should get involved, whether you old person. It's surprising to know that there are some young people who are still thinking the old way,
right?
Not application technology as we have it now. So I think everyone should embrace the change that is coming or that has come, and then improve upon ourselves, whether we are young or old, so we can fit into the current system we find ourselves in.
Right.
And that's the opportunity to learn is always there. We should take the positive side of the technology and learn to improve ourselves. Machines cannot take our work. The human factor will always come to play, and that makes a big difference. So we need to learn the technology, the trends, and all that is in it, so that we can produce better or give off our best in our current situation.
Right. Thank you very much, Veronica, for those thoughts. Now,
so I'll encourage both all levels of leaders and employees, right, to stay open-minded, to be looking out for opportunities, to have the right attitude, a can-do attitude, and constantly, as Veronica was saying, continuously be learning and improving upon yourself and looking for ways, right, to have better relationships. Because if you can go for coaching and counseling to have better personal relationships, then you can have better work relationships as well. Thank you.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining me this morning for this conversation. I'm grateful that Na Ameli Kofi, you came in studio to talk to me. And then Veronica Nano, you joined over the phone lines. I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's how we wrap up today's show here on Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM. We explored human relations at work and its effect on workplace productivity. And we've highlighted how strong connections and a positive work culture drive success. I am Nitra Bihamon. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned. Stay productive. Build great relationships and keep it logged on Zed 101.9 FM. Up next is A Brighter Side with NYA, the brand. Stay tuned.
Calling all